speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here. NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the topmost news platform in the country. Number one in both online and offline reach in India, beating all its competition. NDTV.
You are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Baba. Let's begin with the headlines we're tracking at the moment. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has denounced the International Criminal Court's decision to issue arrest warrants for him and his former Defence Minister Yoav Gallant, calling the ruling anti-Semitic. At least 50 people were killed and 20 others injured when several vehicles carrying passengers were targeted by militants in northwest Pakistan. Russia fired an intercontinental ballistic missile during an attack on the Ukrainian city of Dnipro in what would be the first use in war of a weapon designed to deliver long-distance nuclear strikes. Matt Gaetz, who faced a torrent of scrutiny over allegations of sex trafficking and drug use, abruptly withdrew his bid to become Attorney General in the first major political setback for President-elect Donald Trump since his election this month. Russia is estimated to have supplied North Korea with more than 1 million barrels of oil since March this year, according to satellite imagery analysis from the Open Source Centre, which is a non-profit in the UK. Cricket fans start to gather outside the Optus Stadium in Perth as the first test of the 5-match test series between India and Australia will begin shortly. High-quality lab-grown diamonds are now so cheap to produce that the industry is facing oversupply and fraud concerns. The price of natural diamonds has fallen about 30% in the past decade. Well, a big focus, the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israel's Prime Minister and Hamas's military chief over alleged war crimes. Now, it is the first time that leaders of a democracy and Western Alliance state have been charged by the court in the most momentous decision of its 22-year history. So now, Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant are at risk of arrest if they travel to any of the 124 countries that signed the Rome Statute establishing the court. The court has specifically said it was reasonable to believe Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders committed inhumane acts, including using starvation in warfare, accusations that Israel rejected as anti-Semitic. Now, it's unclear if European countries will comply with the warrants, even as the EU's foreign policy chief called the court's decision binding. But the warrants, they mark Israel's lowest ever point in its battle for international legitimacy and support, some analysts argue. In fact, they further add that Netanyahu could overcome the implications by recruiting Donald Trump's administration to declare total war on the ICC. Now, already a Trump advisor has suggested the US should impose sanctions on the ICC officials that are involved. My colleague Vishal Vivek has been tracking the finer details for us. He joins us live at the moment. Vishal, so the warrants against Netanyahu and his former defense minister focus on allegations that Israel has used food as a weapon in its campaign against Hamas in Gaza?
That is correct. So there have been several blockades across Gaza. Food has not been able to enter Gaza for months now. only some food has been trickling in, and that too has been attacked a lot of times. So all of that has figured in the ICC warrant, and this is the first time that ICC has issued a warrant against Netanyahu, and that too it's an arrest warrant. So as you mentioned, it remains to be seen whether the 124 countries which fall under the purview of ICC, whether they will actually comply with the order or not. However, many of these countries are saying that they will comply, such as the Netherlands has said that they will indeed arrest when he comes in. So that remains to be seen. But the bigger question is that what kind of impact will it have on the whole operation that Israel is having in Gaza? Will this deter Israel or not? Because the two top leaders of Israel have been sanctioned and have been given arrest warrants. So all of that will figure. And as I mentioned, 124 countries fall under the purview of ICC. But whether or not they will actually, they're obligated to, as you mentioned, follow these orders. But most of them are allies of Israel. So all of that remains to be seen at the moment.
As always, Vishal, thanks so much for joining us with the latest. Now, the crucial news: at least 42 people have been killed and 20 wounded after gunmen opened fire on vehicles that were carrying Shia Muslims in Pakistan's northwest. It's one of the regions that have seen deadliest attacks in recent years, as police has also testified. But this attack happened in Kurram, and no one has immediately claimed responsibility for this latest attack, whose victims included 6 women. Here are the details.
In one of the deadliest attacks in the region in recent years, dozens of people were killed in Pakistan after gunmen opened fire on vehicles carrying Shiite Muslims. The gunmen, whose identities remain unknown, targeted a convoy of 200 passenger vehicles traveling through a remote area of Pakistan. At least 50 people were killed and 20 others were wounded, 10 of them critically. The attack took place in Kurram, a district in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, an area already scarred by sectarian violence between the Sunni Muslim majority and the Shiite minority, which has already claimed dozens of lives this year.
د کور می تاریخ کې افسوسناک واقعه ده د حکومت موجودګۍ کې ایمو کنوای باندې فایرینګ کیږي حکومت پروتوکول ورسره وي هغه کې ایمو 40 نائبو شهیدان کیږي اور د کې زنانه او بچي وي نو دا د حکومت د فار ډیر شرم مقام ده اور حکومت اوسه پورې دوره سست سا جنازې نه دی اوچاتي کړي نو مو حکومت نه دا پر زور مطالبه ده چې د دهشتګردو په خلاف پر زور کاروایی وکړي.
Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and President Asif Ali Zardari condemned the attack, vowing that those responsible for killing innocent civilians would not go unpunished. Shiite Muslims make up around 15% of Pakistan's 240 million population, which is predominantly Sunni. The country has long struggled with sectarian tensions between the two communities. As Pakistan grapples with the aftermath of this deadly attack, the challenge of addressing sectarian tensions remain, with many fearing that such violence could further destabilize the region. Samia Afsar for NDTV World.
Well, let's switch tracks now. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that an attack by his forces on the eastern Ukrainian city of Dnipro on Thursday morning was carried out using a new conventional intermediate range missile. He said that the missile, codenamed Oreshnik, was a response to the use by Ukraine of US and UK long-range weaponry to hit targets inside Russia. In fact, Putin added that Russia could attack military facilities of those countries which allowed their weapons to be used for this purpose. As you are aware, the US and the UK authorized the use of their weapons and missiles this week in a major change of policy. By the way, the US sanctioned dozens of Russian banks as Washington ramps up economic warfare against Moscow. This has happened within the last 12 to 14 hours. As the Russian army slowly advances in eastern Ukraine, though, it's driving a tide of human suffering before it. Uma Shankar reports from Ground Zero regarding all the suffering.
A statement issued on Telegram, the Ukrainian Air Force has said that Moscow has attacked with many more missiles, including some ballistic missiles and 7 cruise missiles. The Ukrainian army claimed to have shot down 6 of these cruise missiles. On the other hand, Russian media claimed that British Storm Shadow cruise missile have been fired on Russia from Ukraine's side. About 12 missiles attacked a target believed to be a command headquarters in the village of Marino, but there has been no official confirmation of Russia's claim by Ukraine or the UK. Meanwhile, according to Ukrainian media, this base was being used by North Korean and Russian officials or soldiers. It is being said that more than 10,000 North Korean soldiers have been deployed to fight on fight from the Russian side on the front with the Ukrainian army that has entered in the region of Kursk. The US has also given permission to use long-range missiles for attack these areas, and Ukraine has also been given permission to use Britain's Storm Shadow cruise missile. At present, the round of allegations and counter allegations is going on from both the sides, and in the meanwhile the war is becoming more fierce, and tomorrow what course it will take, no one knows. From Kyiv, Uma Shankar Singh for NDTV.
Well, for further clarity, we have with us Sabine Fischer, the head of Eurasia Division at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. Thanks so much, Sabine, for joining us on NDTV. Clearly, on the Russian state television, Putin has confirmed that Moscow had used a new intermediate range ballistic missile, which we hear is capable of attacking targets at a speed of 2.5 to 3 kilometers per second. Do you think it's time for a negotiated settlement as things deteriorate?
Well, yes, it signals an escalation, and this is exactly part of the signaling that I've just spoken about. And at the same time, it signals that Russia is not prepared to negotiate and make compromise. It signals strength, it signals resolve, and it signals that its war goals have not changed. And Russia's war goal from the very beginning has been the surrender of Ukraine and also the annihilation, if you like, of Ukraine as an independent and sovereign state. And this would have extremely problematic implications, not only for Ukraine, of course. I mean, here the implications are really existential, but seen from a European perspective, this is a very immediate threat to European security, to the security of the EU, of EU member states on an individual base, but also for the European security order as a whole. And I think it would also have very, very serious implications for the global security order. So making concessions, seen from this perspective, is very, very difficult. And as long as the Russian side does not signal that it is ready to compromise, I think it's basically very difficult to start any kind of negotiations.
Right, Ukraine is using US and UK long-range weaponry to target people inside Russia. But what do you have to say about Biden's decision to allow the use of this long-range missiles by Ukraine? Is it provoking Russia? I mean, Putin had warned that if the West gets involved, things will not look up.
Well, I think the fact that the decision was taken now and not before that, it had a lot to do with American domestic politics, with the election campaign. So I think the Biden administration indeed waited until after the elections because it didn't want to damage, let's put it like this, the election campaign, Kamala Harris's election campaign. From a Ukrainian perspective, this is, of course, very, very regrettable because, I mean, you know, it's unfortunately a characteristic of Western military assistance to Ukraine that it's always accompanied by very cumbersome and complicated discussions, and that decisions are being delayed on a permanent basis. So I think this is very much the case here as well. As regards the escalation, I mean, as I said before, yes, this is in a certain way an escalation. I still don't believe that nuclear escalation is very likely, because it would imply incredible damage for Russia as well. So the implications for Russia itself would be extremely serious. And this also includes Russia's relations with the global south. Countries like China, like India and others have made it very clear that they don't want this kind of nuclear escalation. And I think these are signals that reach the Russian government. And this would only be one of the implications that a nuclear escalation would have. And I think what is also important is that, I mean, you know, you asked about concessions in your prior question. If Russia were to win this war, this would also mean that, you know, so the threat with nuclear escalation, I mean, this would send a signal to many states globally that the threat with nuclear weapons is actually very efficient if you want to change borders. And this would be very dangerous, as I said before, for the international security.
Indeed. Thanks so much, Sabine, for joining us on the World 24/7. We will, of course, revert to you for regular updates. In other news, Prime Minister Modi addressed the Guyanese parliament in a significant milestone in diplomatic ties between our two countries. Listen in to what our Prime Minister had to say, which will be followed by a ground report from Georgetown.
गयाना की इस ऐतिहासिक पार्लियामेंट में आप सभी ने मुझे अपने बीच आने के लिए निमंत्रित किया। मैं आपका बहुत बहुत आभारी हूं। साथियों, भारत और गयाना का नाता बहुत गहरा है। करीब 180 साल पहले किसी भारतीय का पहली बार गयाना की धरती पर कदम पड़ा था। भारत और गयाना का रिश्ता आत्मीयता से भरा रहा है और जो बात मैं कभी नहीं भूल सकता और वो है चटनी। चटनी भारत की हो या फिर गयाना की, वाकई कमाल की होती है।
In fact, significant MOUs have been signed between our two nations, whether it's across trade and climate consciousness, culture, cuisine and cricket, in fact, have also connected India and Guyana deeply. That's a point that the Prime Minister has also emphasized on his touchdown while he was addressing the commonalities between our two nations. In fact, addressing a community program in Guyana, Prime Minister Modi also commended the Indo-Guyanese community and their contribution to the development of the Caribbean nation. So 10 MOUs have been signed in this short touchdown. Our Prime Minister has said that he is grateful for the top honor that Guyana has bestowed upon him. Significant developments and strides made in this touchdown between our diplomatic ties between the two nations. As always, news and updates continue right here on NDTV 24/7. Slipping into a short break for now.
It's a web of frauds, calls, luring emails, threatening messages. Cyber frauds have cast their net wide and everyone is at risk. We track the victims, their horror stories as they get conned online, extorted and robbed of their hard-earned money. How to identify a cyber fraud and how to stay cyber safe. What are your options? Fraud.con, NDTV initiative for cyber safety. Only on NDTV 24/7.
The last elections of 2024. It's the battle for India's economic heart. An election that will decide Maharashtra's future.
Can the big brother BJP manage the competing ambitions of Mahayuti? Can the Red Book rally the voters once again for Congress and its allies? So as Maharashtra's future trajectory takes shape, we report from the ground.
Two visions, two ideology, one verdict. An election where no caste chemistry can yield a perfect formula.
It's a state that is splintered with power battles. The big question, will Maharashtra poll outcome unify parties
or divide them further? And who will emerge as Maharashtra's undisputed leader?
I now request the Honorable Prime Minister to launch NDTV World and address the summit.
It was the grand launch of NDTV World by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. NDTV World, as he laid out his vision for the India century at the NDTV World Summit.
कैसी सदी जिसमें भारत के प्रयासों से दुनिया में स्थिरता आए,
In the presence of those who are shaping our future.
मेरी तरफ से आपको ढेर सारी शुभकामनाएं हैं।
NDTV World, your new home for global news is here. Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years.
Welcome back. Matt Gaetz has withdrawn as Donald Trump's nominee for US Attorney General after facing increasing scrutiny over allegations of sexual misconduct and drug use. The former congressman's decision came shortly after a police report revealed new details of an alleged sexual assault by Trump's defense secretary pick, while Elon Musk and Robert Kennedy Jr., who have been named for important government positions, have denied accusations of impropriety. Trump, who was actually found liable for sexual abuse last year, is testing whether his ability to withstand sexual misconduct allegations will transfer to his cabinet picks, as per reports. But by the way, credible accusations are a feature of Trump's own biography. The author of a Me Too book has told the New York Times. Nick Harper joins us from Washington with the latest update.
In a statement, Matt Gaetz wrote he was becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance transition. Donald Trump wanted him to be his next Attorney General, but the former Florida congressman was already facing an investigation by the House Ethics Committee over alleged sexual misconduct, including having sex with a minor and drug use. A 17-year-old girl said she had had sex with Gaetz. Other allegations included Gaetz paying for sex at an invitation-only party in Florida where prostitution is illegal. Gaetz has denied all the accusations against him. He had previously been investigated but not charged by the Justice Department. His nomination for Attorney General needed to be approved by the Senate, but even though Republicans won the majority in November's election, it was unclear if he would get enough support for his nomination to pass. Some senators had already expressed doubts. Gaetz, in his statement, acknowledged that trying to get his nomination passed by Congress would become a needlessly protracted Washington scuffle. In a statement on Truth Social, Donald Trump wrote he greatly appreciated Gaetz's efforts, but reiterated Gaetz's idea that he was becoming a distraction. He wished him a wonderful future. Several of Trump's other picks are also dealing with allegations of sexual misconduct, including his nominee for Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth. His picks have proved controversial, with others chosen despite having any real relevant experience for the roles. Other announcements in the last 24 hours include Matthew Whitaker to become the US ambassador to NATO and former Congressman Pete Hoekstra to be the US ambassador to Canada. The Attorney General position, though, is particularly important for Trump, who has criminal cases hanging over him that he hopes to get dismissed. And there is speculation that he'll try and use the Justice Department, which the Attorney General oversees, to investigate political rivals. No word yet on who Trump now plans to nominate for the position. Nick Harper, NDTV, Washington.
Now the crucial news, in a first, non-member Japan hosted the Five Eyes Intelligence Group. In fact, Japan hosted a meeting of the Five Eyes Intelligence Partnership, a sign of Western nations' eagerness for intelligence on China as well as Tokyo's increasingly key role in Asian security. Now, Japan has been deepening partnerships with the group's members, which is Australia, Britain, Canada, New Zealand and the United States. And one expert noted that senior Japanese politicians raised the possibility of it formally joining the alliance as far back as 2020. The extent of intelligence sharing between the existing members is such that any short-term accession is practically impossible. Still, the meeting raised hackles in Beijing. The Global Times, which is a Communist Party mouthpiece, thundered that the Five Eyes were only using Japan's zeal to serve their own hegemonic purposes. And finally, chocolate makers are turning to India as crop failures in West Africa push up cocoa prices worldwide. In fact, volatile weather in the key cocoa-producing regions of the Ivory Coast and Ghana has led prices of cocoa beans to skyrocket over the past year. So now, while India currently produces just 1% of the world's cocoa, demand for the beans from Indian chocolate and confectionery makers is rising 15% a year. Farmers in the country are also investing in crossbred hybrid varieties. The new strains are disease-resistant and drought-tolerant and offer a much higher yield. So the global average production is 0.25 kilogram per year per tree, one researcher has said, and India is cashing in on that with a 15% increase year on year. And by the way, high-quality lab-grown diamonds are now so cheap to produce that the industry is facing oversupply and fraud concerns. The price of natural diamonds has fallen about 30% in the past decade, while their lab-grown equivalents are down 90%. Some producers have gone bankrupt as the low cost leaves them unprofitable at the difference in price compared with natural diamonds, which are indistinguishable in quality, means that fraud is rife. In fact, one Indian diamond company was accused of replacing $60,000 worth of natural gems in its jewelry with lab-grown stones. And artificial diamonds, as you know, are also used in money laundering, sold at natural diamond prices to hide illicit money flows. Well, grocery inflation just hit its peak after a single banana sold for $6.2 million on Wednesday, and cryptocurrency entrepreneur Justin Sun dropped over $6 million on the piece of produce because it was duct taped to a wall. So the latest update for you is that in the coming days, this man Justin has said he will personally eat the banana as part of this unique artistic experience, honoring its place both in art history and popular culture. Thanks for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest for you. Do stay tuned.
हम ये चुनाव विकास के मुद्दे पर लड़ रहे हैं.
Let them come for an open debate with me. I've challenged Eknath Shinde multiple times.
Congress is in the worst situation in this state.
महायुति में भी इससे ज़्यादा dispute है.
Everything is fair in love and politics.
वोट देने वाले ही जिताने वाले हैं ना.
So we worked on 4 options.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
India's IT capital is always buzz. It's literally a city that never sleeps. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here. NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the topmost news platform in the country. Number one in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust. It's a web of frauds, calls, luring emails, threatening messages. Cyber frauds have cast their net wide and everyone is at risk. We track the victims, their horror stories as they
Pollution continues to remain in a dangerous category. We're talking about above 350 points as Delhiites continue to breathe highly toxic air. And the smog in Delhi is causing walking pneumonia, a phenomenon that it basically means that the infection might be mild, which is why the patient doesn't need to stay at home, but will persist for days or rather weeks. Prime Minister Modi wraps up his three-nation tour. He was started his journey in Nigeria and then went to Brazil and finally in Guyana, and the Prime Minister makes his way home. 1 day to go for the election results in the state of Maharashtra, where security has been tightened at 36 counting centres. And companies selling substandard packaged food in India, according to an NGO report. We're talking about multinational companies, which includes Hershey's, Coca-Cola, as well as Unilever. In his first response to the ICC issuing a warrant for his arrest on allegations of war crimes, Benjamin Netanyahu's office describes the ruling as absurd and false lies. The Border Gavaskar Trophy underway, and India will be taking on Australia at Perth. Can India succeed down under? That's the big question. A very good morning. You're watching The Breakfast Show here on NDTV 24/7. I'm Divya Vadva. Let's start with our focus, which is on pollution. And it's the CAQM that's issued directives to tighten the enforcement gap, expedite action against pollution norm violators. And the CAQM has also directed all NCR states to intensify inspections as well as halt construction and demolition activities in accordance with the GRAP guidelines and take stringent action against violators. We're talking about pollution that remains in the dangerous category. The air that we're breathing here in the national capital is dangerous, above 350 points. Now, special drives were mandated to impound end-of-life vehicles as well as penalize vehicles without valid pollution under control certificates. In addition to that, authorities have been instructed to also resolve the pending citizen complaints on social media sites as well as apps in a time-bound manner. Do remember that construction work is still going on and there are citizens who are complaining of perhaps construction work going on in their neighborhood. So all that is now going to be looked into. All the social media updates where the CAQM has been tagged, they have to now look into the matter, track and monitor as far as daily reporting is concerned on GRAP-related action that has also now been made mandatory.
सारे विषयों पे पूरी तरीके से ध्यान कर रहे हैं और कोऑर्डिनेशन कर रहे हैं। इसमें जितने भी मंत्रालय हैं वो सब आपस में कोऑर्डिनेशन कर रहे हैं। पिछले 2 महीने से लगातार मॉनिटरिंग की मीटिंग भी की जा रही है और जो प्रॉपर ग्रैप की गाइडलाइन है उसको पूरी तरीके से सख्ती के साथ इम्प्लीमेंट किया जा रहा है।
That was the Union Environment Minister Bhupinder Yadav talking about how they're taking steps in order to curb this perennial problem. We have Shreya joining us. Shreya, let's take a look at the figures this morning. Jahangir Puri coming in at 424 points. That's the severe category. Wazirpur again above 400 points. So is the case in Bhawana, Anand Vihar as well as Nehru Nagar. So the top 5 areas in the national capital all in the severe category. So there's just no respite whatsoever. What about the weather conditions? Are they expected to improve soon? And in terms of implementation of all these rules that are on paper, how about that? Is that also going up in smoke just like the cracker ban?
Well, that is something that we have to ground check, the kind of enforcement that is taking place of the GRAP Stage 4 measures. Remember that the situation, the annual air pollution crisis was so bad that it has been now named as a national medical emergency. The Supreme Court also had to intervene. Today also we have a hearing at the Supreme Court. Remember earlier the court said that the GRAP 4 measures will continue to be in place until court orders, until further court orders. So today we will see whether the GRAP 4 will be removed or not. Today, the air quality continues to be in the severe category. It has consecutively been in the severe category this entire week. The AQI is right now 362 and although the sun is out right now, we know the entire national capital is enveloped in a poisonous thin layer of smog. And right now I am in East Delhi, which is also one of the pollution hotspots because Anand Vihar is right here where we know that the buses kind of keep coming from different states, and I'm joined by residents of East Delhi right here. Let's understand how the pollution really affects people on a day-to-day basis at this point, and also right ahead of the state assembly elections, sir. Well, how do you think it will affect the voters' choice? Because 10 years of Delhi government functioning and we have not seen any concrete long-term solution being proposed by the Delhi government. So as a resident of East Delhi, how does the pollution affect you?
See, pollution is a very serious issue nowadays. So you are saying elections are coming very soon. You elect this or that. There's no change. Nobody's doing anything. Nobody's doing any work for the city. 12,000 deaths in a year in the city related to air pollution. Is that a joke? 12% hike in the cancer cases in just 1 year in the city. Is that a joke? We are losing 11.9 or say 12 years of our precious life in the city just due to air pollution. Is that a joke? Our hearts, our brain, our lungs are in danger just due to air pollution. Even that's not a joke. What's the joke? The joke is grab 1, 2, 3, 4. What's the impact of it? What we are getting out of it? Soon we'll be having grab 5, 6, 7, 8 because there's nothing, no outcome. Even after grab 1, 2, 3, 4, year after year, the situation is just worsening.
Right. आंटी आप बताइए आपको कैसे मतलब हेल्थ मैं आपको देख सकती हूँ आप कॉन्स्टेंटली आप कफ कर रहे हो आपका आईज भी वाटरिंग हो रहे हैं
इतनी ज़्यादा पोल्यूशन है मैम कि बच्चे रात को कहते हैं सांस नहीं आ रहा रात को हम गर्म पानी उनको पिलाते हैं डॉक्टर से दवाई भी ले रहे हैं उसका भी कोई असर नहीं हो रहा ये लोग कहते हैं सरकारें कहती हैं बाहर मास्क डालो तो घर में क्या डाले घर में भी मास्क डाल के रखे कितना बुरा हाल है और हर साल होता है अरे इनको कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है इनको कोई वो नहीं है कि लोगों को कितना बुरा हो रहा है इलेक्शन वक्त वोट लेने तो आ जाते हैं लेकिन जनता की अगर सेवा नहीं करेंगे जनता बदल भी सकती है
Sir, अभी बात हो रही है कि artificial rain, of course we know the whole political blame game has been going on for a long time now. The Aam Aadmi Party government is saying that the centre is not approving their artificial rain proposal. Do you think if artificial rain actually gets implemented here in Delhi, it will be a permanent solution to the pollution crisis?
These are just the temporary solutions. The permanent solutions are many more. Why don't you keep a check on the number of vehicles in the city? Right? These vehicles are contributing over 17% to the air pollution. They say 17%.
We can see right here the anti-smog and this water being sprinkled to reduce dust pollution. How effective do you think these are?
No, it's for minutes only. The minute they spray the water is somewhat better and after a minute or two is the same situation again. So they say 17% of the air pollution is caused by the vehicular emissions. We say it's much more. But why there's no check on the number of vehicles in the city or number of vehicles per family, per household? There's no check. Why there's no odd even? Because it impacts their kitty. It stops their earnings. So there's no check on the vehicles. There's no odd even. There's no check on the traffic jam and congestion which causes pollution all over due to traffic jam. There's no check on the encroachment, which causes again traffic jam and causes pollution. They're not doing anything seriously. They are not taking any serious measures. And we the people, we are on the deathbed.
Absolutely, as sir rightly mentioned, that it is increasing vehicular emission that kind of affects the national capital's annual air pollution crisis. Although the Commission for Air Quality Management has been severely criticized by the Supreme Court for the delayed action, for not taking proactive action to curb the vehicular emission. Right now, the CAQM has issued a stringent directives to sort of penalize the vehicles that are not carrying the pollution under control certificates. The end of life vehicles should be impounded. These are the directives that are being announced by the CAQM, but how much of that is actually being enforced, how much of that is actually being monitored on ground is a very big question. There are other questions as well as to will artificial rain, will that solve the problem? And even if the talk is going around artificial rain, when will it actually be implemented? The whole idea of cloud seeding is a very fancy idea, and there has been much talk around it, but when will it get implemented, and will the graded response action plan stage 4 measures continue to be in place, or will it be removed after today's Supreme Court hearing? This is something that we need to look forward to.
Right. Thank you so much, Shreya, for joining us with all those details. Of course, because of the smog, there's also an uptick in walking pneumonia cases. The infection, which is caused by a bacteria, damages the lining of the respiratory tract, including the throat, windpipe and the lungs. The symptoms include coughing and sneezing. They're typically milder than other lung infections, so people tend to not stay at home, stay in bed, perhaps, which is why that nickname walking pneumonia has been given. The infections are typically mild, but their symptoms last for weeks. That is what the doctors are saying. And to get more on this, we have Dr. Aditij Damija, General Physician and Health Influencer, joining us. We also have Zareen Osho, Director of the India Program Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development, joining us as well. Doctor, over to you first. When we talk about the symptoms of a walking pneumonia, they're usually very mild in comparison to other lung infection, but they last for weeks together. So what are the symptoms to look out for? And in case people are self-medicating, what measures should they be following?
Okay, so when you talk about atypical pneumonia, which is this walking pneumonia, firstly, we are defining this pneumonia on the basis of the symptomatic presentation rather than the organism which is causing it. We are calling it walking pneumonia because a number of young people, particularly under the age of 40, are not getting similar